Part 1.
You will hear a telephone conversation between a receptionist who works at a house renting agency and a man. First, you'll have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hello, how can I help you today?
Yes, hello. I'm just phoning you as I have seen an advertisement on your website for a property that I'm interested in renting. If possible, I'd like to find out some more information before I organise a viewing.
No problem at all. What is the address of the property that you'd like to inquire about?
It's 21 North Avenue.
Okay, what is it that you'd like to know?
First of all, I'd like to know what facilities the office has, as I need to make sure that it'll be suitable for my advertising company.
I see. The office contains a large open-plan space with a wide frontage onto a busy street with lots of passers-by. So your business would have a really good street presence. There is also a toilet and newly refurbished kitchen equipped with a dishwasher and oven.
Wow, that sounds great. I'd definitely like to register my interest.
Okay, perfect. I just need to take some details from you, if that's okay. What is your full name?
Jonathan Smith.
And what position do you hold in your company, Jonathan?
Until recently I was sales manager. However, I've recently been promoted to regional manager, so I'll be in charge of running our new office. Can I ask where the office is located?
Yes, of course. It's located downtown, just around the corner from Royal Square Shopping Centre.
That's a bit too far out of the centre for my liking. I'd much prefer to be located in close proximity to the station. Do you have any property located in that vicinity?
It would help me to narrow down the results if you could tell me how many employees you intend to have working in the office.
Our branch is made up of 30 employees, and we'd like some extra space for meetings and presentations.
Most average office spaces are around 8,000 square feet, but it sounds like you would need more space than that. I think that 10,000 square feet would be more suitable for your needs. Now, let's see, we have 10 properties that match those criteria, so let's try and narrow it down.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
Do you have any other requirements?
Well, we'll need access to the office 12 hours a day, but security should be 24-hour. We don't hold any money on the premises, but it's crucial that we protect our customer information against theft.
Okay, anything else?
Yes, ideally I would prefer the new office to be split over 2 levels, so that the working office area is kept separate from street level. That will enable us to locate a reception at ground floor level to welcome customers when they arrive.
And are there any particular facilities that you need?
Our employees work very hard throughout the day, and I want to make sure that they're well nourished. It would therefore be ideal if I could provide them with a kitchen to cook hot meals at lunchtime.
Would you want the kitchen to be located at first floor level with the office?
No, I don't want the office to be filled with the smell of food. It would be better if the new office had a basement where we could locate the kitchen and staff room area to keep it at arm's length from the workspace.
Okay, I have now narrowed the search to 2 available properties. Do you have any other requirements that could narrow our search down to 1 result?
All of our office staff will be working at desktop computers, so I'll need the office to be equipped with at least 40 power sockets if possible.
Anything else?
Studies have shown that exercise is very important for maintaining happiness and healthy brain function. In an office environment, it's very difficult to get sufficient daily exercise, so it would be great if they had access to a nearby exercise area.
One of the available offices is located next door to a gym. Would this be suitable?
Yes, absolutely. A gym is exactly what I was thinking of.
Brilliant. Do you need the office to be furnished?
I don't think so. I already have some furniture, so I would prefer to bring this myself.
That's no problem at all.
And before I forget, we will definitely require Wi-Fi access, as much of our work and customer recruitment is carried out online.
No problem. It sounds like the property will suit your needs perfectly. I've taken the liberty of booking you a viewing at 3 p.m. on Thursday, so you can see it for yourself. Is there anything else I can help you with today?
No, I think that's all the information I need. Thanks very much for your help.
No problem. It's been my pleasure to be of assistance. Goodbye.
That is the end of part 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 2. Part 2.
You are going to hear an introduction to a library by George Martin, who is the head librarian. First look at questions 11 to 16. As you listen to the first part of the talk, answer questions 11 to 16.
Good morning, and welcome to the main library of the University of British Columbia. My name is George Martin, and I'm the head librarian. And happy to give you a brief introduction to our library. I guess I'm qualified. I've been working here since 1961, back in the days when the only electrical or electronic stuff here was the lights. Oh, and the phones, of course. Mechanical typewriters and slide rules then. No fancy laptops and cell phones. Computers? In a library? No way. Everything was on paper. If you needed to find something, you went to the card index. And if that didn't help, you asked one of the staff. And if that didn't work, you told your professor that you couldn't write the essay because the library didn't have the book you needed. My, you students have it so easy nowadays. We've got about 15 computer terminals on each of our 4 floors. If you know the title or the author, then you can find out if we've got it in seconds, and, if we do, where it is. If we haven't got it, then you can find out if the public libraries and other university libraries in Vancouver and Barnaby have it. Now you know that library books are arranged according to the numbers on the back of each book. Does anyone know the name of this numbering system? Right, the Dewey Decimal Classification System, which was invented by Melville Dewey, an American librarian, not John Dewey, the philosopher.
Now look at questions 17 to 20. As the talk continues, answer questions 17 to 20.
In Melville's day, book classification systems were in a real mess, so he decided to do something about it, and around 1876 came up with the system we still use today. Look up there, and you can see a list of basic categories. 000, generalities, which includes all sorts of things. Encyclopedias, news media, etc., etc. Then 100, philosophy and psychology. 200, religion. 300, social sciences. And so on up to 900, geography and history. With over 4 million books, actually nearer to 5 million now in our library, We have a lot to thank Melville for. Now, if you look up to your right, you can see the layout of the library. It's very logical. We start down here on the first floor, or the ground floor for our British cousins, with 3 zeros, generalities, and so on up to the 4th floor with all the 800s and 900s. By the way, you won't find books on medicine and dentistry here. They're all over in the medical library, just to the east of the medical school. Now, if you look at the plan of the 2nd floor, you can see we have a CD and DVD library. The music collection covers just about everything that we call serious, from Bach and Beethoven, folk music, blues, early rock and roll, jazz and more. But sorry, no punk, heavy metal, rap or hip-hop yet. For Oriental music like Peking opera, you'll have to go to the Asian Studies Centre or Chinatown. A word about taking books out. The usual lending period is 2 weeks, but a few books in great demand can only be taken out for 2 days. And I suggest you try to return books on time. The fine is $1 a day for the first week and $1 a day thereafter. That's a lot of beer money. One last thing. Your fancy new smart student card is also your library card, and you can also use it to pay at the student cafeteria. So don't lose it, or you'll starve to death without any library books. Okay, I guess that's enough here. Let's move up to the 2nd floor.
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 3. Part 3. You will hear a conversation between a student called Mary and her tutor, Mr. Hadstone. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, Mr. Headstone. Is this the right time for our meeting?
Yes, it is. Thanks for coming in at such a late hour, Mary. I know you've had a busy day studying and will be keen to get home. And thanks for volunteering to run this project. It's going to help you develop and practice skills needed by teachers today. Field trips are getting more and more a part of school life. So as a student of education, it'll be wonderful training for you. It's really a great opportunity.
We did loads of field trips at school, so I've got a good idea of what sort of things we could do.
I expect so. But we're here to go through the basics of planning one, and the trip leader carries a load of responsibility. Right now, you're focusing on activities, but your main job is to consider the dangers and come up with ways of countering or avoiding them. There are lots of government regulations you won't have been aware of on your school trips, but they're just a guideline for your own planning. Some of those school trips you went on would have been pretty adventurous, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and your plan needs to be tailored to the kind of trip you're doing. On a well-planned and successfully led adventure trip, we don't often hear of problems, even though sometimes there's bad weather, for example, that a school party has managed to combat. That's because the leader created a well-thought-out hazard management plan.
Ah, I thought I'd just be taking my mates out on a trek. Now it's all paperwork.
Yes, well, that's why I called you in. We'll work on this together over the next few days. I just wanted to give you a heads up on what you'll need to think about. There are some aspects that every trip needs to consider. What do you think they might be?
Well, heavy rain or high winds, I guess. And any dangers in the terrain?
Yes, we call those the significant factors. And another important one is the makeup of your group. But you don't need to go overboard. There are some kinds of hazard that you won't need to think about at all. Things like hurricanes, earthquakes, radioactivity, or major diseases such as cancer. The official name for those is unlikely events, because they almost certainly won't happen.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Okay, so let's consider the hazards seen as most likely on a field trip into the countryside. Weather causes real problems. Overexposure to the sun or the cold, even the wind, can have a big impact. And of course, the weather can change very suddenly and without warning.
Yes, people can get into trouble in the hills if they don't bring extra layers of clothes and a jacket, even if they start walking on a hot day. Oh, and a raincoat too, of course. What's next then?
Well, let's think about possible activities and what you might need.
Yes, okay. Well, for hiking, of course, we need a first aid kit. Oh, and a decent topographic map of the area. And we need to make sure that more than one person can read it. I've run into lots of difficulties in the past with people who can't identify even major features, like rivers. And some people have no idea about contour lines. And I suppose a compass, too.
You'd need to list those. Then there are things that might be obvious but must be written down and considered seriously. For example, if there's a possibility of falling more than 2.5 meters, that's considered life-threatening. And I'm sure you would be aware of problems near the sea, like tides or high waves. And the trouble you can get into where there's a possibility of an avalanche or a mudslide or a flash flood if you're anywhere near rivers.
Yes. Well, I was thinking of an adventurous route for this trip. You know, that's always more fun. And it's such a cool feeling when you've achieved something really difficult.
Yes, okay, but then you need to consider who's going to be in your party. Don't go and plan things that are beyond the reach of most people, or you're asking for trouble. You need to take into account the physical strength and experience of the party as a whole. When you make your groups, make sure there's at least one person in each one who's been hiking a few times before.
Wow! There's a lot to write down, isn't there? I'm really keen to get started now.
Well, good, because there's a lot more detail to consider. For now, I'll just mention 2 more of the common hazards for high school trips in particular.
Yes?
The Ministry of Education website says don't use inexperienced volunteers. And don't allow student drivers to bring their own cars, or to drive anyone else's car for that matter.
Well, now I really have something to think about. Thanks, Mr. Headstone.
That is the end of part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 4. Part 4.
You will hear a lecturer in education talking about some experiments done in the USA to investigate the effects of reducing class sizes. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
All over the world, there are passionate arguments going on about how educational systems can be improved. And of all the ideas for improving education, few are as simple or attractive as reducing the number of pupils per teacher. It seems like common sense. But do these ideas have any theoretical basis? Today, I want to look at the situation in the USA and at some of the research that has been done here in America on the effects of reducing class sizes. In the last couple of decades or so, there has been considerable concern in the United States over educational standards here, following revelations that the country's secondary school students perform poorly relative to many Asian and European students. In addition, statistics have shown that students in the nation's lower-income schools in the urban areas have achievement levels far below those of middle-class and upper-middle-class schools. So would reducing class sizes solve these problems? Well, we have to remember that it does have one obvious drawback. It's expensive. It requires more teachers and possibly more classrooms, equipment, and so on. On the other hand, if smaller classes really do work, the eventual economic benefits could be huge. Better education would mean that workers did their jobs more efficiently, saving the country millions of dollars. It would also mean that people were better informed about their health, bringing savings in things like medical costs and days off sick. So what reliable information do we have about the effects of reducing class sizes? There's plenty of anecdotal evidence about the effect on students' behavior, but what reliable evidence do we have for this? Let's have a look at 3 research projects that have been carried out in the USA in the last couple of decades or so. The first study I'm going to look at took place in the state of Tennessee in the late 1980s. It involved some 70 schools. In its first year, about 6,400 students were involved, and by the end of the study, 4 years later, the total number involved had grown to 12,000. What happened was that students entering kindergarten were randomly assigned to either small classes of 13 to 17 students or regular-sized classes of 22 to 26. The students remained in whatever category they had been assigned to through the 3rd grade, and then, after that, they joined a regular classroom. After the study ended in 1989, researchers conducted dozens of analyses of the data. Researchers agree that there was significant benefit for students in attending smaller classes, and it also appears that the beneficial effect was stronger for minority students. However, there's no agreement on the implications of this. We still don't know the answer to questions like how long students have to be in smaller classes to get a benefit, and how big that benefit is, for example. The second project was much larger and took place in California. Like the Tennessee study, it focused on students from kindergarten through to grade 3, but in this case, all schools throughout the state were involved. The experiment is still continuing, but results have been very inconclusive, with very little improvement noted. And the project has, in fact, also had several negative aspects. It meant an increased demand for teachers in almost all California districts. So the better-paying districts got a lot of the best teachers, including a fair number that moved over from the poorer districts. And there were a lot of other problems with the project. For example, there weren't any effective procedures for evaluation. All in all, this project stands as a model of what not to do in a major research project. A third initiative took place in the state of Wisconsin at around the same time as the California project began, and it's interesting to compare the two. The Wisconsin project was small. Class sizes were reduced in just 14 schools, but it was noteworthy because it targeted schools at which a significant proportion of the students were from poor families, compared with California's one-size-fits-all approach. Analysts have found that the results are very similar to the Tennessee project, with students making gains that are statistically significant and that are considerably larger than those calculated for the California initiative. Now, I'd like to apply some of these ideas.
That is the end of part 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers.